The morning sun filtered through stained glass windows of St. Mary's Cathedral, casting rainbow patterns across wooden pews filled with mourners. At the front, surrounded by white lilies, lay the simple casket of Mother Superior Margaret O'Brien. For 40 years, she had been the heart of St. Mary's Convent, a woman whose compassion had touched countless lives. Sister Catherine knelt in the front pew, rosary beads clicking softly, as she prayed for the woman who had been more than a leader, a mother figure to every sister. At 75, Mother Superior Margaret had passed peacefully, her face serene as if moving from one prayer to the next. The entire Catholic community had come to honor a woman who never turned away a soul in need. The church overflowed with nuns from neighboring convents, former orphans grown into successful adults, local families she'd helped, and clergy who'd served alongside her for decades. Bishop Morrison prepared to lead the funeral mass, his voice heavy with the weight of losing such a pillar of faith. Sister Agnes, 82 and the convent's oldest member, dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. She'd worked with Mother Superior for 3 decades, knowing better than anyone the depth of her sacrifice and dedication. Under Margaret's leadership, St. Mary's had become a sanctuary for abandoned children and women in crisis. Mother Superior had personally overseen care for over 200 orphaned children, many now sitting as successful adults in these very pews. Everyone present felt they were saying goodbye to a living saint, a woman whose life testified to selfless love and unwavering faith. As the funeral mass began, no one could have imagined the shocking revelation that would soon shatter everything they believed about their beloved leader. Block 2. Sister Catherine's Eulogy. When Bishop Morrison called Sister Catherine to deliver the eulogy, silence fell over the congregation. At 35, she was among the younger nuns, but had been especially close to Mother Superior, serving as her assistant for 8 years. Her voice trembled as she approached the microphone, carrying the weight of representing their beloved leader's legacy. Mother Superior Margaret often said, "We are called to do small things with great love," Sister Catherine began, her voice strengthening. For 40 years, she lived this principle daily. She woke before dawn to pray, not just for herself, but for each of us, every child who'd walked through our doors, every soul needing God's grace. Sister Catherine's eyes swept the tear-stained faces of lives Mother Superior had touched. She never sought recognition. When the diocesan newspaper wanted to feature her work with orphans, she declined, saying God's work needed no earthly publicity. When the mayor offered to name a street after her, she suggested planting a garden where children could play instead. The sister paused, collecting herself as emotion threatened to overwhelm her words. Mother Superior believed every person who came to St. Mary's was sent by God. She saw potential where others saw problems, hope where others saw despair. She taught us love is not a feeling, but an action, and every day proved that teaching. I remember arriving at St. Mary's, young and uncertain about my calling. Mother Superior said, "Catherine, God doesn't call the equipped, He equips the called." She showed me that being a bride of Christ means embracing everyone as family. Sister Catherine's voice grew steady, filled with love and respect. Her greatest joy was watching others find purpose and grow in faith, celebrating every victory, comforting every loss. Block 3. The unexpected interruption. Just as Sister Catherine prepared to conclude with a final prayer, commotion stirred at the cathedral's back. A man in his mid-40s, wearing a simple dark suit and clutching a worn manila envelope, stood abruptly. His face was pale, hands shaking visibly, eyes fixed on the casket with startling intensity that made nearby mourners turn and stare. "Excuse me," the man called out, his voice cracking with emotion. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have something that needs to be said." The entire congregation turned, whispers rippling through the church like wind through wheat. Bishop Morrison looked up sharply, brow furrowed in confusion. Sister Catherine stood frozen at the pulpit, unsure whether to continue or step aside. "Sir, this is a funeral service," Bishop Morrison said firmly but kindly, rising from his seat. "Perhaps we could speak after the service." But the man shook his head desperately, stepping forward into the aisle. His legs seemed unsteady, as if whatever he carried was too heavy to bear. "Please, I know this isn't appropriate, but I've carried this secret for 22 years, the stranger said, his voice growing stronger despite obvious distress. "Mother Superior Margaret wasn't who you think she was. She was everything you've said, but there's something else, something she never told anyone." The cathedral's silence was deafening. You could hear candle flames flickering and distant traffic. But inside, hundreds held their breath. Sister Agnes gripped her pew, elderly hands white-knuckled with tension. Other nuns exchanged glances of confusion and concern, while former orphans stared at this stranger who dared speak of secrets at their beloved Mother Superior's funeral. "My name is Thomas Brennan," the man continued, tears in his voice but words clear. "Mother Superior Margaret saved my daughter's life, but how she did it changed everything." Lock 4. Thomas Brennan's revelation. Thomas walked slowly down the center aisle, envelope clutched against his chest like a shield. Every eye followed his movement as Sister Catherine stepped back from the pulpit, sensing that whatever was unfolding would change everything they thought they knew about Mother Superior Margaret. 22 years ago, I was a different man, Thomas began, his voice echoing in the vast space. Addicted to drugs, living on streets, stealing to survive. My wife had left, taking our newborn daughter, Sarah. I was violent, unpredictable, dangerous, everything a child should be protected from. He paused near the front pews, eyes fixed on the casket. One night, in a drug-fueled rage, I broke into my ex-wife's apartment. I wasn't thinking clearly, just wanted my daughter back, but was in no condition to care for anyone. When police came, there was a struggle. My ex-wife was hurt badly. She died 3 days later. Gasps echoed throughout the church. Several nuns crossed themselves while others leaned forward, struggling to understand how this tragedy connected to their beloved Mother Superior. Bishop Morrison started to rise but paused, sensing something crucial in Thomas's demeanor. "I was arrested, sentenced to 15 years for manslaughter. But my daughter Sarah was only 6 months old. She had no family, no one to take her in. She was going to become a ward of the state, probably bounced between foster homes for years." Thomas's voice broke. "That's when Mother Superior Margaret stepped in. She came to the courthouse during my sentencing. I don't know how she knew about Sarah, but she was there. She spoke to the judge, social services, anyone who'd listen. She convinced them to let her take Sarah to St. Mary's, to raise her as one of the orphans. The revelation sent shockwaves through the congregation. Block 5. The impossible truth. Thomas opened the manila envelope with trembling fingers, pulling out yellow documents and photographs. His hands shook as he held them up for the congregation to see, though most couldn't make out details from their seats. Mother Superior Margaret didn't just take my daughter into the orphanage, Thomas said, his voice gaining strength from finally speaking truth. She adopted her, legally, officially adopted her. But she never told Sarah the truth about her real parents. She raised my daughter as her own niece, told everyone Sarah was the child of her deceased sister. The silence was absolute. Even candle flames seemed to hold still. Sister Agnes's face had gone pale, her mind racing through memories, trying to reconcile this revelation with the woman she thought she knew. Sister Catherine gripped the pulpit's edge, feeling as if the ground had shifted beneath her feet. For 22 years, Sarah believed she was Mother Superior's niece, that her parents died in a car accident when she was a baby. Mother Superior created an entire backstory, complete with fake photographs and stories about a sister who never existed. She even had a memorial mass said for this fictional sister, just to make the story believable. Thomas pulled out a photograph and held it up. This is Sarah today. She's 22, graduating nursing school next month. She's beautiful, intelligent, kind, completely devoted to helping others. She volunteers at the Children's Hospital and wants to become a pediatric nurse. She credits Mother Superior, the woman she knew as Aunt Margaret, with inspiring her to serve others. But Sarah doesn't know any of this, Thomas continued, voice cracking with emotion. She doesn't know her father is a convicted killer, that her mother died because of my violence, that the woman who raised her sacrificed everything to save a stranger's child. Mother Superior made me promise never to contact Sarah, never to reveal the truth. Block 6. The letters from prison. Thomas carefully extracted a bundle of letters tied with a faded blue ribbon, his fingers reverent as he handled what were clearly precious possessions. For 15 years, while I was in prison, Mother Superior wrote to me every month. She told me about Sarah's first steps, first words, first day of school. She sent report cards, Christmas photographs, updates on every milestone I was missing. He untied the ribbon with shaking hands and selected one letter from the stack. This is from 2010, when Sarah was 8, he said, unfolding yellowed paper. His voice was thick with emotion as he read, Dear Thomas, Sarah lost her first tooth this week. She was so excited, could barely sleep waiting for the tooth fairy. She's becoming quite the little artist. I'm enclosing a drawing she made of our garden. She says she wants to plant vegetables to help feed hungry children. Tears rolled down many faces in the congregation as they listened to this glimpse into Mother Superior's secret correspondence. Sister Catherine felt her heart breaking as she realized the incredible burden their leader had carried alone for decades, raising a child while maintaining the facade of celibacy, protecting that child from terrible truth while ensuring the father never completely lost connection. She never judged me, Thomas continued, selecting another letter. Even though I had destroyed my family, even though I was everything she stood against, she saw something worth saving. She wrote about forgiveness, redemption, second chances. She helped me get clean in prison, connected me with counselors and chaplains. She saved 2 lives that night, Sarah's and mine. Thomas looked directly at Sister Agnes, who had been Mother Superior's closest friend. Sister, did you ever wonder why Mother Superior was so tired some mornings? Why she sometimes seemed distracted during prayers? It's because she was staying up late every night, writing letters to a convicted killer, making sure he knew his daughter was loved and safe. Block 7. The Secret Room Discovery, Sister. Agnes suddenly stood up, her elderly frame trembling with realization. The locked room, she whispered, loud enough for those nearby to hear. Sister Catherine, we need to go to Mother Superior's quarters immediately. Her urgency was palpable, and Bishop Morrison nodded gravely, understanding there might be more evidence to uncover. As a small group, including Sister Catherine, Sister Agnes, Bishop Morrison, and Thomas, made their way to the convent. The congregation remained in stunned silence, processing the revelation that had shattered everything they thought they knew about their beloved Mother Superior. In Mother Superior's simple quarters, Sister Agnes led them to a closet that had always been locked. She said it contained personal family items, things too precious to risk being disturbed. Sister Agnes explained as she produced a key from Mother Superior's desk. I was to open it only after her death, to decide what to do with her personal effects. When the door opened, they discovered what amounted to a shrine to Sarah Brennan's childhood. The walls were covered with hundreds of photographs. Sarah as a baby taking first steps in the convent garden, as a toddler helping nuns tend other children, as a school-aged child receiving awards, as a teenager volunteering at community events, and as a young adult graduating high school and starting nursing school. But it wasn't just photographs. There were report cards dating back to kindergarten, everyone carefully preserved in plastic sleeves. There were handmade cards Sarah had given her Aunt Margaret for birthdays and holidays, children's artwork carefully matted and framed, and even a lock of baby hair from Sarah's first haircut preserved in a small glass vial. Thomas stood in the doorway, overwhelmed by this visual representation of his daughter's entire life. "She kept everything," he whispered. "Every single thing." His eyes landed on a small table holding a baby book, meticulously filled out with details of Sarah's growth and development. Block 8. Mother Superior's private journal. In the corner of the room sat a cedar chest. Sister Agnes opened it to reveal dozens more letters, copies of letters Mother Superior had sent to Thomas in prison, along with his responses. At the bottom was a leather journal, and when Sister Catherine opened it, she found Mother Superior's private thoughts about the enormous secret she had carried for over 2 decades. Sister Catherine began reading, her voice barely above a whisper. March 15th, 2002. I have made a decision that may cost me everything, but I cannot turn away from this baby. Sarah is innocent of her father's crimes, innocent of the tragedy that brought her into this world. If I do not act, she will be lost in a system that cannot love her as she deserves. Thomas leaned against the wall, overwhelmed by hearing the thoughts of the woman who had saved his daughter's life. Sister Agnes sat heavily in Mother Superior's reading chair, her own memories rewritten by these revelations. April 3rd, 2002. The adoption papers are finalized. I have told the sisters that Sarah is my deceased sister's child, and they have accepted this without question. God forgive me for the lies I must tell to protect this child. I pray that the love I give her will outweigh the deception that surrounds her existence. The journal entries continued chronologically, documenting Mother Superior's struggles. September 10th, 2005. Sarah asked me today why she doesn't have grandparents like other children at school. I told her that family is not always about blood, but about love. I am becoming more convinced that this is true. Tsayute, December 25th, 2008. Sarah made me a Christmas card that says, "To the best aunt in the world." My heart breaks knowing I am not her aunt, but I am grateful beyond words that she feels loved. Thomas wrote that he is making progress in his rehabilitation. Bishop Morrison had been silent throughout the reading, but now spoke softly. She documented everything because she knew this day would come. She knew someone would need to understand the choice she made. Block 9. The truth about Sarah. As the group stood in Mother Superior's secret room processing the magnitude of their discovery, Thomas pulled out his phone and made a call. "Sarah," he said when someone answered, his voice thick with emotion. "This is going to be difficult to understand, but I need you to come to St. Mary's Cathedral immediately. There's something about Aunt Margaret you need to know." 20 minutes later, a young woman who looked remarkably like Thomas entered the cathedral. Sarah Brennan was indeed beautiful, with kind eyes and the same gentle demeanor that had characterized Mother Superior Margaret. She wore scrubs from the hospital where she worked, having come directly from her shift caring for sick children. "What's wrong?" Sarah asked, looking around at the somber faces of nuns and clergy members who had gathered. "Is this about Aunt Margaret's funeral? I know I missed it because of my shift, but I was planning to visit her grave tomorrow." She paused, confused. "Who are all these people, and why do you all look like you've seen a ghost?" Thomas struggled to find words. How do you tell someone their entire life has been built on a loving lie? How do you explain that the woman they mourned as an aunt was actually an adoptive mother, and that their real father has been watching from a distance their entire life? "Sarah." Bishop Morrison stepped forward, his voice gentle but firm. "Please sit down. What we're about to tell you will change everything you thought you knew about your life. But I want you to understand that it comes from a place of love, the deepest, most sacrificial love imaginable." Sister Catherine took Sarah's hand as she sat in the front pew. "Your Aunt Margaret wasn't really your aunt," she began carefully. "She adopted you when you were 6 months old. Your real parents. Your mother died when you were a baby, and your father—" She looked at Thomas, who stepped forward with tears in his eyes. "Block 10. Father and daughter meet." "I'm your father, Sarah," Thomas said, his voice breaking. "And Mother Superior Margaret spent 22 years protecting you from the truth about me, while making sure I never completely lost connection to you. She saved your life, and in doing so, she saved mine too." Sarah's face went through a series of emotions: confusion, disbelief, shock, and then something that might have been recognition. "That's impossible," she whispered. "Aunt Margaret told me my parents died in a car accident. She showed me pictures, told me stories." But even as she spoke, her mind was working, remembering inconsistencies she had never questioned. "The pictures were fake. The stories were created to protect you," Thomas explained gently. "But the love was real. Every single day of love and care you received from Mother Superior was absolutely real." Thomas took a deep breath and told his daughter the truth about that terrible night 22 years ago, about his addiction, about the fight that led to her mother's death, about his years in prison. Sarah listened without interruption, tears streaming down her face as she learned the tragic circumstances of her birth. "But here's what Mother Superior wanted you to know," Thomas continued, pulling out the last letter from the manila envelope. "She wrote this for you, to be given only if the truth ever came out." He handed Sarah a sealed envelope with her name written in Mother Superior's familiar handwriting. With trembling hands, Sarah opened the letter and read aloud. "My dearest Sarah, if you are reading this, it means the secret I have carried for your entire life has finally been revealed. I want you to know that adopting you was not a burden or a sacrifice. It was the greatest blessing of my life. You were never a killer's daughter to me. You were God's gift, a reminder that love can triumph over tragedy." Sarah's voice caught as she continued. "Your father made a terrible mistake that cost your mother her life, but he has spent every day since trying to make amends. You have grown into exactly the kind of person your mother would have been proud of. Compassionate, dedicated to helping others, full of love and light." Block 11. Redemption and understanding. Sarah looked up at Thomas, then at the nuns and clergy who had become her unexpected family. "She really wrote to you about me all these years?" Thomas nodded, pulling out his phone to show her dozens of photos that Mother Superior had sent him over the years. Photos of Sarah that she had never known were being shared. Every birthday, every graduation, every achievement. "She made sure I knew about all of it," Thomas said. She wanted me to see the incredible person you were becoming, even though I could never be part of your life. Sarah stood slowly, walked to Mother Superior's casket, and placed her hand on the polished wood. "Thank you, Aunt Margaret," she whispered. "Thank you for loving me enough to lie to me. Thank you for giving me a life filled with love instead of shame." She turned back to Thomas, studying his face as if seeing it for the first time. "I don't know if I can call you Dad," she said honestly, "but I can see why she thought you were worth saving too. Anyone who could inspire that kind of loyalty and love from Mother Superior must have something good in them." The funeral ended not with the planned burial, but with an extraordinary scene of reconciliation and understanding. Sarah and Thomas sat together in the front pew, looking through photos and letters that documented a relationship that had existed in secret for over 2 decades. As the cathedral slowly emptied, Bishop Morrison made an announcement that surprised everyone. Mother Superior Margaret O'Brien will be considered for sainthood. What we have learned today about her sacrifice, her love, and her willingness to risk everything to save an innocent child demonstrates extraordinary faith and love that the Church recognizes as saintly. Sarah and Thomas left the cathedral together, beginning the difficult but hopeful process of building a relationship based on truth rather than secrets. The funeral that was meant to honor a remarkable nun had instead revealed the story of an extraordinary mother whose love had been so deep and pure that she had been willing to sacrifice everything to save 2 souls who both needed redemption in different ways.